This is Mike Friday with the Nickel Independent Film Festival. We are celebrating our 25th year this year, and in honor of that, we are talking to filmmakers from Nickel's past, present, and hopefully future. One such filmmaker who we're speaking with today is Ian Foster. Thank you for coming and chatting with us, Ian.
Thanks for having me.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about how you found your way into filmmaking. Where did you sort of get your start? I know that you're a very multidiscipline artist. So what was it that kind of pulled you into film?
Yeah, it was through music, which is my, I guess, primary profession. Basically, I started scoring some friends' films, which is what happens here in Newfoundland, whether it's scoring or helping out or whatever. It's one of the kind of beautiful things about, I guess, the art scene here is that you can sort of fall into it a little bit there. And I do a lot more scoring now, but it's hilarious to think back on those beginnings where they're very humble and someone just goes, "You make music, maybe you could do that with my film."
Yeah.
Which is not necessarily true. It's not the same job, but I was lucky to get my start in there. And so I started, I guess, seeing films in different stages of undress, as a composer does. You're not necessarily, you're certainly not editing or composing, I should say, to the final cut of the film, necessarily. Certainly not the final color, probably not the final audio, like all those things. So I started to really learn, I guess, the different pieces of what went into filmmaking, obviously making friends in that part of the industry. And at one point I had this short story and this song that's on a record of mine called The Evening Light. And the song title is, I kid you not, "A large crowd gathers for the deceased Jeff Elliott's encore performance."
Wow.
Smartly, I think, I named the film version One More Song. Something way easier to fit in a program. And so it's this sort of light satire of the idea of an artist coming back, an artist maybe who wasn't appreciated as much in his life. The name Jeff Elliott is sort of like a little bit of a nod to Elliott Smith and Jeff Buckley as people like that who didn't quite rise maybe to their, certainly not to the level of fame post-death that they received. And what would happen if they could come back for one more show? You would have all these kind of newbie fans who didn't really know them when they were around and all that. So it sort of explores that a little bit. And that was my first short. I made it for the budget of whatever it cost to feed people on the shoot, and had a lot of volunteer friends. And its first screening was at the Nickel, in fact. And I won an award that year for best screenplay for that film. So the Nickel also gave me my very first film award. So certainly I have a lot of love in my heart for the Nickel.
Well, that's great to hear. We certainly have a lot of love in our heart for you. And so I wanted to talk about you were sort of saying that having a music background isn't quite the same as having a scoring background. What were some of the changes and difficulties, or maybe the joys of moving back and forth between those two mediums?
Yeah, to speak to the joy first, I just loved how much it opened me up to the possibilities of sound. Obviously when you're working if you're making an album, it's often a rock album, a folk album, a fill-in-the-blank genre album, and you can pull in little influences, of course, and craft your sound, but it tends to be, naturally falls into a genre. And the beauty of film is sort of how wide open it is, and how every opportunity is a new sonic opportunity, because your goal is to work with the director to achieve their vision. So if their vision is more suited to an electronic score, then that's what you're making. And if it's more suited to like a lush orchestral score, then you're going to, work that way. So, I think that early on for me, because I guess I had been performing for maybe 6 or 7 years by the time I scored my first film, that was a nice entry into that world of sort of no genre barriers. And I think I've carried that forward in some ways back into the musical world that I do. So I think they feed each other, So it was, it's one of those things I don't think you really realize at the time it's happening. You sort of look back maybe 4 or 5 years later and go, wow, that's the last 4 or 5 years of scoring a few shorts has really affected the kind of music I'm making as a songwriter now, and that's a beautiful thing. In terms of the differences, I mean, I think. Again, kind of similar. You are working to achieve a director's vision as opposed to your own vision if you're a singer-songwriter. So it's a collaborative process. Obviously, film, if you think music is collaborative, I mean, it's a joke when you go to the film world, as you know. Like a 30-person production would be a small production in film versus music. It's often you and a couple of engineers and artists working together in the room together, So knowing your place within that structure is an education as well, and understanding how to work within that, and also how to deliver your piece of the art to the next person, in my case the mix engineer and stuff like that, and all those little details that really add up.
So when you were moving into making your own films, was there any, or even maybe this is for music too, but in art in general, is there any sort of art you turn to for inspiration, like something that's really been formative in your artistic career?
I mean, it's funny because I'll break the fourth wall and say, even in the pre-interview, you prepped me for this possible question, and my mind has been blank ever since, because to me it's always like when, if I saw you out at a party or whatever at the Nickel next week and I was like, what have you been listening to? Mine will be like, I have no idea, even though I was listening to music on the way here, you have to break out your phone and look at your most recently played, and then you're like, oh, you get really excited once you start reminding yourself. And I still feel that way right now, but I'll say that in terms of just general inspirations, I guess more and more, I'll speak to musically first. More and more over the last number of years, I've been thinking about artists that really seem to have just walked their own path and have had really long careers of continuing to do new things. I'm thinking about people like Brian Eno or Daniel Lanois, artists who are now, into their retirement years, technically. I actually just did a beautiful little online workshop with Brian Eno this January. Oh, wow. And I believe he's 76 now, and he's as vital as ever, and may we all be that way at 76. Like, he seems almost his most curious about art now in his elder years, and I think that's just such a huge inspiration for me. I mean, he just put out a record the other day, and that I was like, oh my God, there's another Brian Eno record out, and it's really interesting because it's almost become, I love a lot of Brian Eno stuff, but it's almost become detached for me, that level of inspiration from the actual art sometimes. Like, sometimes I love it and it resonates, sometimes it doesn't, but I'm still just glad he's doing it either way. You know what I mean? I'm glad that he's walking his path, and that in itself to me is an inspiration. Any artist that does that, I think, is, and he's one that I've obviously loved a lot of his music. So yeah, that's definitely a big inspiration.
That's great, and a long-reaching one too. You can always pull back to that inspiration. Seems like he's gonna keep on trucking out new cool stuff. So
absolutely.
So I want to talk about Hang In There. So that's your film that you've submitted this year. You talked about not sort of pegging yourself into genre or into one genre. This film, it's a comedy, kind of a, I almost want to say dystopia, but it's really comedy about some real present issues. Can you talk about where the seed of this project sort of came from?
Yeah, it was definitely a very personal story, because I've gone through my own journeys through our medical system over the last number of years, both myself and with my family. My mother, who sadly passed away a couple of years ago from cancer, had just the year prior had 3 heart surgeries, and so through both immediate family, friends, myself, I've seen it up close and in the trenches, and I don't think there's anyone that we could talk to today, if we just walked out into the street and asked, would not have a story, probably of some sort, ranging from not being able to get a doctor's appointment up to far, far more dire things. And it was somewhere in the midst of all that, for me personally, that I actually remember thinking I was going to make a Facebook post, that modern screaming into the void, I would say, of making a Facebook post. And I guess smartly, something in my brain said, don't do that, make it art instead.
Okay.
And so instead of just looking for that validation, I kind of closed that window and opened a notepad and started to write this thing that first became a short story that wonderfully won the Arts and Letters Award a couple of years ago for short fiction. And the nature of the short story is that it's just dialogue. It's just a back and forth conversation. So it converts very well to this two-hander film where it's basically a medical administrator who viewers, I'm sure might be able to draw conclusions about who it might be. But of course, it's stand-in for, I'm sure any province, that is going through this, any place in the world, and a reporter who's speaking to them about this rather unorthodox solution to our medical woes, which is obviously the satire and the comedy of the piece. So, it's definitely it was cathartic for me to write. I'm a big fan of the sort of dark humor in general, as all my friends know, and I'm a big Black Mirror fan, and that sort of tone that can be biting and serious, but at the same time, hopefully, get some silly laughs as well. I do notice that I'm in the drama slot for this, so I hope that's not a commentary on how funny the film is. So I really do hope people find some of the catharsis in it that I found, and obviously just some good laughs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're in that category because the themes of it are a little more, they are dramatic. It is a dark comedy, and it is a very that Black Mirror, some of those episodes as well. I think it's a great comparison, toe the line between those two tones. So.
Well, this will be its premiere, so I'm looking forward. I highly doubt it's necessarily ha-ha funny, but let's see if it's funny.
Yeah. So you wrote this as a short story. Did you always know it was going to be a film? How was that transition from the page to this to? Did you find that you had to write a screenplay for it, or was it? You mentioned it was a two-hander. Was it close enough that you could kind of build the script or build the film right off of the page?
Well, it's interesting. It's going to sound like we planned this, Mike, but it's this interview because it really is a sort of mirror of One More Song and that first film that I made. In that sense, One More Song also, it was also a song, as I said, but it was a short story first, and similar to this one, that then got converted into a film. So it's sort of an interesting, hopefully not closed by return, but a return, of approach, and yeah, it's because it was so much a conversation. I definitely thought it could easily be a film, and ultimately it was. But you always learn stuff on every shoot, and I had a fantastic, very, very tiny cast and crew because we did have a very small budget for this, and we were able to pay everybody. But it was, it was a small one. It was good that it was a two-hander of two people in a room. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, you always learn things. You always learn the stuff that you think that will work on the screen, that worked on the page, and vice versa. So. There were definitely tweaks that happened along the way. I mean, looking at it now, 30,000 foot, it might not seem necessarily like a lot changed, but there were a lot of little things, I think, that evolved as the story was told for the screen instead of the page.
Very cool. I like the screenwriting to prose writing. There's a lot of great stuff. I thought, there's I feel like there's a freedom in prose to. In film you have to show, not tell, but you can only tell in prose. And
that's
so being able
true.
To get inside the characters, yeah.
That's really true. And now that you're even saying that, it's reminding me that I think probably one of the biggest changes was that the story is very much, I think back to the Black Mirror thing, it's often that sort of like concept forward kind of story, like the gag of the story, for lack of a better term, And so in the short story, I think... Dr. Howard's character, the medical administrator, he had a lot of the text space, because it was sort of that was the the show don't tell of having the character reveal things about the overall idea, right? Rather than just the back and forth. But certainly in bringing it to the screen, where we have two wonderful actors in Colin Furlong and Alison Woolridge, we wanted that bit more of a back and forth. We wanted that bit of relationship, even though the film is still a very like concept forward sort of dark comedy. We wanted Allison to have, you know, a bit more to chew on as a character and to challenge the doctor character or the medical administrator character a bit more. So that was definitely a shift in trying to figure out how to give more space from the short story over to the journalist character instead of just have the medical administrator character say everything.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much for coming and chatting with us today. If anybody is watching and they want to catch Hang in There, it's playing on Saturday, June 21st at 6:30 p.m. at the LSPU Hall. We'll see you there. Ian, I'll hopefully have a chat with you again after the show.
Absolutely, Mike. Yeah, no, this is great. I'm really looking forward to it. It's quite the schedule next week, and I'm looking to check out as much as I possibly can. It's looks like a great run of films this year.
It's going to be really exciting, so I hope I'm looking forward to seeing you there, and I hope to see all of our viewers there. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks.